Hey, welcome back, horror fans, cinephiles, and Giallo enthusiasts. I'm Tanner Leeser, and this is The King in Giallo, and this is episode 4 of the Giallo Adjacent podcast. This is the second film we're discussing. I am joined here with ParkNarcz. Well, we'll just cut right into it. If you've seen the thumbnail, you know we are talking about Investigation of a Citizen Above Suspicion. I almost completely flubbed that. This is a 1970 Italian crime film directed by Elio Petri, and let's just jump right into it. So we will talk a little bit about the plot. We won't go too much into it. We will discuss spoilers. We're not inherently set out to just spoil the movie, but it will come up in the conversation, no doubt. And then we will go into the deeper themes of the movie. And there's a lot to discuss there because this movie did very well with the awards in 1970. And then we will talk about how Giallo we feel the movie is. We'll say right now, this is not a Giallo. I don't know of any circles that have ever said it is a Giallo, but...
Whoa. Okay, hold on a second. You're saying... So when you say it's not a Giallo, you're trying to suggest that it's a Giallo, aren't you?
It's funny because when I watched it earlier today, I was looking out for things that I could say, well, it kind of is. So here's something that I've been saying a lot recently in my reviews, because I've been going back and I've been watching as many of the Giallo films that I covered on my channel in the Forgotten Giallo film series. And one of the main things for the Forgotten Giallo film series is those are movies I just haven't seen, and they aren't easily
Most
available.
of them are not available to watch, right?
They're not easily available. Either there was an old DVD from 2006, or right. There's a DVD from Spain, or maybe there was an Arrow UK release or something. But right. If I could find the movie, I would get it. But there are a handful of DVDs that I just didn't do, and in the meantime, I've actually bought several of these movies. And so, for example, Deadly Sweet, Sweet Body of Deborah, A Rather Complicated Girl, I ended up finding all these DVDs and getting them, and so I've been going back and doing little talking head reviews, and I'm open to actually go back and do Jolly Tally videos for them, but I'm kind of transparent when I mention the Forgotten Giallo films and how I do it is, if this movie wasn't so quote-unquote forgotten, there probably would be a US DVD Blu-ray from Arrow, Blue Underground, Vinegar Syndrome, someone. But that's the main thing. Watching it, I'm looking out for things.
So real quick, are you saying this movie is was on the Forgotten Giallos list?
No. It wasn't, because I've never seen it mentioned as one. So, for example, Elio Petri's 1969 or 1968, A Quiet Place in the Country, I have seen come up in Giallo film lists. I bring it up because as I've been going through and doing these reviews, one of the things that keeps coming up is if this is a Giallo film from the 60s, pre-Bird with the Crystal Plumage, there's this common thread of, and we've discussed this before, off the air, that genre is very fluid, and
yes.
with Giallo especially, it's very, very fluid. And before Bird with the Crystal Plumage, it's even more so, because the genre wasn't really a named thing, and so the parameters or the scope was even wider. The net was even wider.
What year did Crystal Plumage come out?
1970. Very early in 1970.
Whoa, okay.
Right? Yeah.
Wow. All right, so go on.
So check this out. So remember I said that Giallo films before Bird with the Crystal Plumage are very... there's a lot of different things. I broke it down as, you'll see movies that are kind of les diaboliques in terms of the characters are it's about characters going mad, whether
Yeah.
it's through guilt or whatever. But it's like, is this person really dead? And then there's a whole other subgenre of elites behaving badly because they're just so bored with life that they kind of just get off on betraying each other or just tormenting the lower class. And that was kind of what happened in A Rather Complicated Girl. I talk more about it in the review, but that was kind of what was going on in that movie.
Can I ask you a question about that? I'm, shall we say, a student of film. I have never been to film school, but I've been into movies. Always been a fan of Italian film. Can you explain, is there a relationship, or shall I say, is there a relation between, or a correlation, whatever, is there a connection between these movies that you're talking about, where the upper classes are essentially psychos? Um, is there a connection who do whatever they want, and so on? Is there a connection between that and what is called the white telephone films? Well, those are movies that were made in Italy under Mussolini. They were basically made to make you want to be a rich person. Like, oh, that's what I would aspire to be.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting. I can't say definitively yes they are, but the era that these films came out in this like mid to late 60s, it kind of felt like that was part of the culture
There's
or
definitely
the counterculture.
There's definitely like a backlash to, I think, whatever
Yes.
was previously allowed. It was what it feels like. Because
Right.
I know that Italy was less restrictive with their films than like Nazi Germany, but it was still, there were still like a lot of movies that were made, I think, with the government's encouragement, and so these films were,
And Giallo paperbacks were one of the things that was heavily censored.
Okay, so I got to
You
bring
couldn't
this
have
up.
you couldn't be praising foreign characters. You couldn't
Right.
be having the government look incompetent.
Oh no, yeah, of course, that's perfect. And
Yeah.
what is the chick in this movie reading when we see her at the beginning of the film? It doesn't show the name of the book, but it's a little yellow paperback.
Oh, whoa! That went right over my head.
Oh, I thought you would have jumped at that one. Yeah, I was like, holy crap. I'm pretty sure she's reading a Giallo.
Oh, whoa! I actually totally missed that.
Okay, that's funny because I didn't even think. Yeah, I never noticed it before. I never noticed it previously probably because I wasn't thinking in that frame of mind. But it was just because I knew we were doing Giallo adjacent. I was like, holy shit! She's holding. I'm pretty sure it's a Giallo. I mean, it's literally a little yellow book. So, however you want to put it, it's a yellow, quote unquote, Giallo book. So,
Yeah.
that's kind of fun. But
No, it's probably it's probably
I'm jumping
definitely
ahead.
a reference. No, you're good.
I'm jumping ahead, but it does feel like, to jump ahead further, it feels like this movie exists within a cultural sweet spot where it picks up all these different things, for sure.
Yeah, yeah, and it really does. I mentioned this in my little review. Is that the movie kind of straddles a lot of genres, but one thing I pointed out was I don't think Elio Petri was interested in making a genre film.
No.
It doesn't feel that way because you could say it has elements of Polizioteschi. It has elements of Giallo, but I would never call this a Giallo Polizioteschi hybrid.
What year did the Polizioteschi start?
Late 60s.
Okay.
I'm trying to see like what the first one is. It looks like
exactly.
60. It looks like Wake Up and Die, 1966.
Okay.
Oh, whoa! Investigation of a Citizen Above Suspicion is under Wikipedia's selected films for Polizioteschi.
That's what I would say that it is, actually. That's my personal opinion, is that's a Polizioteschi. So, okay. Is it Polizioteschi or Polizioteschi?
Polizioteschi.
Polizioteschi. So the Giallo movies, I'm sorry. So the crime movies, the Polizioteschi started first, and then
Well,
Well, no, you're right. You're right because
Giallo
it's the
started
same
in
thing.
'63, but it was kind of like
Oh, I totally forgot Bava. I don't know why, but I always think that Argento is the first, but he's not. Yeah, you're totally right. That's why I'm a
well, it's
fucking
like
Giallo show.
yeah, no, but you're good. But I don't know. I don't know when. Excuse me. I don't know when Polizioteschi became like this is a thing. This
Right,
is a thing that we're going to repeat and repeat and repeat.
right.
Because with a lot of genre cinema, there's precursors, but they're more experimental, and it's not until something
Yeah.
is a hit that studios are like, okay, we will
See,
pay you to write and direct something because we know we're going to make money, and that's kind of when the genre really like takes
exactly.
off.
I think that. See, I always, because I was never sure. I think I read a little bit about it in this book on Italian cinema I read once, but not very much. I always assumed that Polizioteschi was essentially just the sequel to spaghetti westerns, where it was like because
Like
spaghetti
modern
westerns.
spaghetti westerns,
Well,
sort
yeah, it
of.
was like the continuation of the same kind of trend because um, you could argue. So spaghetti westerns started. I think people are going to hate me for not knowing this sort of thing. I mean, my channel's not necessarily about this, but I am a fan of these things, and I don't remember exactly, but I think it was about the mid '60s, '66, '67, something like that. Somewhere around then, that Fistful of Dollars came out, and so that would have been the beginning proper of spaghetti westerns. Hell, that would have been the beginning of spaghetti westerns, as far as I'm aware. So that became such a huge chunk of the Italian film industry for so long.
Mm-hmm.
And
Says
oh, go ahead.
looks like the first one that pops up is the Seven from Texas, 1964.
I don't. That's horseshit. Whatever. When did Fistful of Dollars come out? If someone just be like, well, actually, this is the first because they can say that's an Italian western, but that doesn't make it a spaghetti western.
Right, right. I thought it
This
was a
again,
little
this is
earlier,
part
but
of
I'm
the
going
genre
through.
thing. And by the way, maybe I'm wrong. I actually just have never heard that. Like to my knowledge, Fistful of Dollars is the first spaghetti western. There's maybe other Italian westerns, and I've even heard some people argue that.
Fistful of Dollars is 64 also.
Okay, so 64. So either way you slice it, they were both 64.
Yes, I think so.
Okay,
Are you talking about Polizioteschi?
no, no, but whatever.
Oh, the other film was 1964.
Okay, yeah. So either way you slice it, 64 was when it started. That was a huge chunk of the industry from 64 to basically the early 70s. I'm pretty sure was when the Trinity films were made. I'm not sure, but I think that's when they started making the what was his name? Terrence Hill? Whatever the
Yeah,
guy's name is. Yeah, to Terrence, like the comedies, like spoofs and that's how you know something's at the end of its run. Basically, is that's what people say anyway. Is that you know something at the end of the run because people are parodying it, and so that by that point, I think the Polizia films, I think they kind of overlapped and slowly took over as like an action movie because
yeah,
the westerns basically were action movies.
yeah. And also, when you get into this whole tumultuous time in Italy, I feel like filmmakers kind of felt, well, we can certainly use the West and the Mexican Revolution and all these events, like about less than a century ago, to kind of make a metaphor for what's happening today. But I think a lot of filmmakers realize, well, shit, there's a lot of stuff going on right now that's like cinema. Why don't we just make
Yeah,
gritty heist films and political assassination films?
I think part of the issue was a concern for censorship because I think Italy was known for that. I mean, this is an
Hmm.
entirely different kettle of tea, but you and I are familiar with Cannibal Holocaust, which
Hmm.
is a movie that it was. Did they literally ban the film in Italy, or am I wrong about that?
I mean, it was banned in a lot of places. Pretty
It
sure
was
it was. I'm
banned in a
pretty sure
lot
it
of
was
places.
pulled. Yeah.
I think it was banned in Italy, and it's like that's kind of crazy though because Italy it's banned in other places, but most of them were like I don't know. I don't want to get into it, but let's just say countries where you'd expect that sort of thing because it's just sort of stupid to do. But Italy, it's like, well, you guys are supposed to be a democracy, as they say in Investigation of a Citizen Above Suspicion. But no, it's there was concern about that, and that plays into something at one point in the movie, and we're going to talk about that when it gets to that. But
So, real quick, 60s Giallo, just to wrap this up again, 60s Giallo films are take the whole definition of Giallo very loosely, and so this is why you get these heated debates between Giallo fans who will die on their hills like that's not a Giallo, or they'll be like, oh, this is such a great underrated Giallo, where other fans might say, I don't really think it is. But one thing that I've been careful to do when I talk about any of these movies is mention that some people will say this is a Giallo, and I'm not going to tell you whether it is definitively or not. I'll just put my take in terms of what I think, and a lot of them, and like I said, for the 60s movies, I just accept that it's a very loose thing. And after Bird, it becomes more solid. And interestingly, Investigation of a Citizen Above Suspicion came out. Guess when it came out in relation to Bird.
ooh, like a year after.
It came out 18 days before it.
Whoa, that's
Yeah.
crazy right there.
Yeah.
So okay, but you're saying that the Bava movie came out 63?
The Girl Who Knew Too Much was 1963, and Blood and Black Lace was 1964. And so there was
Okay, so
already
64. Oh
it
my
was
god,
already there. But
dude, 64, the same year you have the birth of the Giallo and the spaghetti western.
yeah,
That's
wow.
pretty fucking
That's
eventful year. But it is there's things to be said, but the thing about it is this, and this is part of my like comment on the film. It's pretty fucking straightforward. There is some subtext, and we can discuss that, but essentially it's all text. So it's you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. No, but it's cool because the movie clearly has a lot to say, but it's not being
Yeah.
like subversive with it. It's very
It's not
obvious what it's
hiding it.
doing.
It's
It's
not
not
hiding.
hiding at
Yeah,
all.
exactly.
No.
So, and this film was part of a subgenre that Elio Petri kind of tried to invent, which was called polypop, which means political popular films. And
Okay.
he wanted to create these movies that would be at the cinema next to The Godfather or whatever, but they would be highly politically charged, right? And that's what basically where this comes from. And he has other movies like this, The Working Class Go to Heaven, Property is No Longer Theft, which is a pretty crazy one. The some of the movies I feel they struggle a bit with. If I'm going to give a little bit of a criticism, because I love Elio Petri, he's one of my favorite directors, but they struggle a bit with conflict, where it's like you need a little bit more conflict in this movie. But they're fantastic visions. The Tenth Victim, they're fantastic visions, and they're all so beautifully shot. They're all so perfectly, wonderfully shot that you're just like staring at the way he films a guy walk through a room. You know, so and this film
Yeah.
might be his best shot movie.
There was a shot. It's funny that you say that because one of
I
the
say
shots
that
that's
I say that not having seen all of his films, so I shouldn't say that. But go on.
there was the shot that stood out the most to me was John Maria Volante walking into this room where his comrades are interrogating this guy who's like sitting in a chair, and it's like this wide shot, and he's walking into like the right side of the frame, and everybody is on the left
Yes.
side of the frame
Yes.
circled around, and he walks over, and I think he either starts lighting a cigarette or something, but there's a great moment where he's over here and everybody's over here, and then like either the captain or whoever it is, his partner, walks up and then starts talking to him. But before he like crossed it, I was just like, that's beautiful, that's a great shot.
Yes. You have these beautiful long tracking shots, which they had not yet invented the Steadicam, to my knowledge, which means that they had to have laid track probably for all of those shots, to do a dolly. And so it's like that's fucking nuts, and it's so beautiful. It reminds me there's like this continuity throughout people who are really throughout cinema, people who are like really good with the movement of the camera. Like I'm thinking of like Fritz Lang and M, where the camera's
Yeah.
just kind of gliding around. Max Ophuls films have a similar kind of thing that Kubrick kind of latched onto, and it's just you see that in this movie, and yeah, I'm sorry I interrupted. You were still saying stuff. Finish what you're saying.
The last thing I'll say before let's just get into it is that the year or two before this, Elio Petri made A Quiet Place in the Country, which,
Yes.
again, pseudo giallo, I think it is. By the way, I know you haven't watched it yet.
Yeah,
At least
I
I don't
haven't.
think you have. Check it out, dude. Franco Nero is in it, and
So
it's
people are going
pretty
to
good.
say you call Elio Petri one of your favorite directors and you haven't seen all of his films. Yes, here's why. At the time that I really got into him, not all of them were easily available in America, and so they've since become more available. But I just haven't gotten to watch them yet because what I actually want to do is kind of have a little film festival where I just sit down and watch all of the films that I haven't seen of his. But I've seen Investigation of a Citizen Above Suspicion. I've seen The Property is No Longer Theft. I've seen what's it called? Fuck. um, The 10th Victim. So I think that's all. That might be all the films that I've seen of his. And you might say that's all for him to be one of your favorite. Yes, and the reason is primarily because of this film. It's also a little bit The 10th Victim because I do like that movie, and there are some shots in The 10th Victim that are that are similar to shots from here. I think that was 69, so right before this. Fantastic movie. Well, I mean it's ridiculous, but I love it. The shots are so beautiful, and he also does the same. Go ahead.
1965.
Oh, 65. Okay. He does a thing in both movies where he really likes the look of like orange glass, and he'll like go by it. I'm pretty sure that's in 10th Victim too. I could be wrong, but yeah. Anyway,
So I went through the plot in my video. So do you want to kind of go through your assessment of the plot, whether you want to
well,
be super detailed or just give a quick rundown?
well, first off, there's this really weird, interesting thing that you'll find with the movie, which is that the credits play in total silence. Which, for a movie that is scored by Ennio Morricone, is like, what? Like, you have Ennio Morricone, sorry, Morricone, and you, it's like, what's happening? And then suddenly the movie starts, and you have this one, what I think is one of Morricone's best scores. It's really great.
Mm-hmm.
And you watch these things happening. This guy's walking over to where his mistress, or I don't even call her mistress because he doesn't have a girlfriend. I don't think
It's
but like his girlfriend's place.
Yeah, it's his. You'd still call her his mistress probably
Okay.
because she is married.
So her thing, but it seemed like they weren't really together for a while. You know what I mean? And he was a.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to get too far into this because we're not authorities to say, shall we say, to speak on this. But he was a transvestite, so I don't know if he was even into her or what was going on there. I don't know what was going on. So, am I wrong about that? I just watched it today. I mean, I have seen it before. Obviously, her ex-husband wasn't her ex-husband a transvestite, and they were gonna blackmail him about it.
I know he's gay. But,
Yeah, so I believe that the main thing though they were going to blackmail was transvestitism was like illegal or something. Maybe even being gay is actually being gay has to be illegal because they mention homosexuality as a thing. Although to be honest though, the shit that he says. So was it illegal to be a protester too? Because he deliberately mixes up things, and then we're getting ahead when we say that, but he deliberately mixes things together when he says that, and that's why I wasn't sure if that was an official crime.
No, but that was a funny thing where there was a part where he was listing off. The rates of certain types of, you wouldn't even really call them crimes, they're just like personalities or whatever you'd call it, but he would say that they've got like 400 confirmed homosexuals.
He was listing real crimes next to things that he considered crimes. So he said, at one point he said 200 rapes, and then he said like, before that I think he said like, actually I have it written down because I thought this was pretty interesting. He said 200 rapes, and the next he said 30 attempts to destroy state property, which is a crime. It is a crime, but it's certainly not a crime of the same seriousness. And then another thing he mentions is 6,000 homosexuals. So
is it 6,000?
He throws a bunch of stuff together. So but he's deliberately mixing what you might call political crime with actual crime. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, and then he's like listing about how many people are like left wing sympathizers, how many people are
Yeah.
anarchists, how many people are like old school like Mussolini like sympathizers. One of my
Like,
favorite
yeah, it was
parts.
funny.
One of my favorite parts was they were listing like the again like the differences in certain types of crimes from like the previous year, and they were talking about the rates of vandalism of like graffiti, and it was like this there's like this many instances of like pro Che
Yeah.
graffiti, this many instances of pro Mussolini, this many instances of
Well,
like
pro Stalin, and
Vietnam.
then
Oh,
it's
pro
like pro
Stalin, but there's
Stalin,
also
and then
pro.
oh yeah, I think you're right. They said that too.
There
But
was
there's
some pro Mussolini stuff, yeah.
I think you're right. But there's a
And,
pro Stalin one,
and
and then after Stalin died, the number of them goes down, and then there's like pro Khrushchev.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then I think correct me if I'm mistaken, but I thought they said that there was some that was like pro Mussolini, and they were like, we decided to leave those ones up.
No, no, no.
It was-
You're thinking of the ones that after Stalin died, the graffiti changed to death to Stalin or down with Stalin.
Oh, death!
And they
That
said,
was it. There was
said,
death
we're
to
gonna
Stalin.
leave those.
We
Yeah,
we're gonna leave those
we
ones
left
up.
those ones up. Yeah,
I laughed so hard at that. I thought that was
that
great.
is really good.
I mentioned this in my video was that it's a satirical, kind of a dark comedy. Well, not super dark, but it's a satirical comedy. But what I mentioned was it wasn't really like there were jokes written. It was a lot of just like
It's not a
things
yeah.
it was
I
a
would
lot of
call
things
it
that people say, but it was what I thought was really funny was how people said them. So, like the example I
Yes.
gave was when he's talking to his police chief and he's mentioning, that woman. I was actually carrying on an affair with her, and he kind of turns over to him and he just goes, "How was she?"
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it was just like
my favorite thing is how that scene ends, because he goes, I don't know, I'm not sure. He's like, bye, I'll see you later. He goes, as Volante's leaving, he goes, I don't know, I'm not sure if I should tell them, and he goes, I think it was the husband. Ciao. And he's
Yeah.
like, ciao,
Yeah.
ciao. And the way he says ciao is so funny. He's just like,
Yeah,
you can tell he's saying, it's cool. We gotta do that shit sometimes. I know you killed her. It's
Yeah.
like, so the basic plot, and it is a basic plot. That's what the movie is. It's very simple. The premise is the film. The chief of homicide at the police department. He's just been promoted to chief of homicide. He has had this relationship going on with his mistress, where he has basically it's a BDSM relationship that's based around the fact that he is a police officer and he can do whatever he wants to her. Is the simple way to put it, and she essentially emasculates him, makes him feel less of a man one day, and he decides to actually kill her because they have these like pretend sessions where they're pretending he's killing her. And what he
Yeah.
does, and what he literally does is he kills her, and then he deliberately leaves clues because he wants to see if he can get caught, because this is a whole other BDSM game that he's playing with the entire fucking state. instead of this woman. That's what the film is about. And
Yeah. And what's brilliant with the premise is, again, it's not like this, it's a metaphor for abuse of power. It's like, no, it's very clear that that's what it is. Like, it's
Yeah.
not like they're trying to be tongue in cheek. It's like, no.
Well, I should say
that's what it is.
I should say he's doing it with the citizenry of Italy. Like, he's using the entire citizenry of Italy as his sub, in this weird BDSM game that he's playing. And it is very upfront because he says it. He says it directly that he actually, one of my favorite parts is he brings a guy in who can identify that he was in the vicinity of his dead, mistress. And the guy says he's not going to turn him in because he's an anarchist, and he says it's fitting that the head of police should be a criminal. And Volante is so good. He starts to like cry, like he's on the verge. He's like on the verge of tears, and he goes, "You have to. You don't understand. You have to do it," because he's so into this idea that he has to prove he's above suspicion, and the only way to do that is to throw out things that show that he should be arrested but for
Yeah.
some reason they just don't do it. And he does it in a very like you're saying, the movie doesn't have jokes. It's just that the situation is played so straight in so many ways,
Yeah.
and so like what if it really happened, that
Yeah.
it becomes a comedy.
So let me ask you this, because this is something that I took away from the film, which I thought was really, really incredible. And I mentioned this in the review, was that this movie does not come off really like they're stretching, the truth a bit, in terms of, it doesn't feel like it doesn't feel like they're pushing the bounds of
No, because
of verisimilitude. It actually feels
yeah.
like no, this is real. And I go on to say that, like, because throughout the narrative he starts exonerating the main suspects they have, and he's already left all these clues, and he's doing everything to point to him, but they keep assuming, well, it can't be him. I mean, it can't, and it's not like they're trying. It's not like they're stupid, and it's not like they're trying to rule him out because he's their friend or he's their cohort. It actually is like they don't see the connections, and like I said, we're going to just get into spoiler territory, but he ends up just confessing to his superiors.
At the end of the movie, he has to just confess because he runs out of everything.
He's running out of
work.
Yeah. But what I thought was so incredible about that was, again, some people can watch it and be like, oh, like they're so incompetent or they're so stupid, like they can't even follow through with it and arrest him. But I actually thought the movie was so genius because they actually were doing their jobs.
There are people who suspect him, but there's one person in particular who actually cares enough that you could tell he wants to get him arrested. But what it is everybody else who suspects him, which is a lot of people, they just deliberately ignore it.
Well, what I was going to say for in that scene, like, going to my point, was that he's confessing, but
oh, right,
technically confessing to a murder is not enough for them to convict you of a murder. You need actual irrefutable proof and evidence that you did it. And he's telling them, but he's clearly seems like he's having a breakdown, and they kind of are attributing his confession to his recent promotion and that he's probably just kind of on edge a little bit. But every time he says something to try and back up, like, yeah, but she was my mistress, I was having an affair with her, and they're like, yeah, but we actually don't have anybody who can substantiate that. You say that, but but nobody actually saw you together. And I thought it was so funny because after the murder, he intentionally put all these clues to point to him, but before that, he'd done such a great job of actually hiding their relationship.
Yeah, exactly.
That by the time he's dropped in all these clues, it's like they might point to him, but there's still so many gaps that they can't just convict him on certain things. And I just thought it was so good. And then when he says, and they're like, well, what would your motive have been? And he was, well, she made fun of me. And they're just like, that's not a motive.
They call him a child for saying that. So what's really funny is throughout the movie, there's a pattern of showing them, they torture people to confess to things that they didn't do.
Oh, yeah.
At the end of the film, these guys torture him, the main character, to confess that he didn't do something when he did. That's basically the twist, and that's like the little joke at the end. And it's funny. It does work very well. And then you have a really weird thing where he wakes up from a nap, and oh no, that didn't actually happen. And then they come in and they're going to judge him, and then he closes the blinds. And the way he closes the blinds and the shades come down, the shutters. It's metaphorically like, okay, the bars in prison are going to come down on him.
Yes.
But the film ends, and what's interesting is why they did that.
Right. Well, because here's the thing. You could interpret it, it's kind of like how you can interpret the ending of The Sopranos many ways, but so you can interpret that as like, oh, he's going to jail, but you could also interpret that as maybe he's not, but he's going to be in a personal prison of his own making.
That's a good way. Yeah, and it's going to be like one of those shitty horror movies where the exact same thing he just dreamed happens again.
Yeah.
No,
But
you're right. No, Prison of
uh,
His Own Making is a good metaphor. I like that. Yeah.
do you agree with me that in terms of that the when he's trying to confess,
Yeah, yeah.
it's not, again, it's not that they're incompetent, it's actually that they're doing their job really well, and he actually just didn't do a good enough job of incriminating himself initially.
I wouldn't say they're doing their job properly, but what I would say
Well,
is,
but they're
you know
doing
what
it
I mean?
how he kind of taught them.
Yes. Here's the thing. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. This is a case of I learned it from you, Dad. Like they absolutely he trained them all, the one people who worked under him anyway, to do that. But one gets the impression that the people above also train him to do that as well. And what I think is definitely comes out is that they know he did it. It's like if you go down, we all go down. This
That was the
affects
other
us
thing I was
all.
going to say.
Yeah,
It's a House of
yeah,
Cards type situation. Yeah. But
definitely.
again, like as they were disproving it, like his confession alone is just isn't strong enough to actually
It's
tie
not
it all together.
substantial enough because it's not substantial enough. Um, the
Which is
film
funny
we
because
jumped. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was gonna say it's funny because it contrasts how the people that they've gotten, to confess under torture, and then they just, fix the evidence so it does point to these people who are innocent, and they're just like, well, we're not willing to do that for you, but
No,
you know, a
exactly.
lo-
No, well,
yeah,
because he's a cop and and he's the chief of homicide, no less. It would be a really big deal for them. And in this moment, exactly at this specific time where they're facing all of these students that they don't want to deal with, all these protesters, what is going to be worse than revealing that the head of homicide killed somebody? That's like, you know what I mean? So
a
that
criminal leading the repression.
I mean, yeah. The thing is, well, repression is civilization, as the main
Uh-huh.
character says. By the way, we don't know what his name is. The movie never actually, as
Yeah,
far as I know, never says what his fucking name is. So,
unless you just go by Il Dottore, but that's his
Il
nickname.
Dottore. You mean the
Yeah,
detective or whatever?
no, it's the doctor.
They call him the doctor.
Hmm.
When did somebody? Yeah, I remember hearing someone say Il Dottore, but is it like a nickname?
Yeah,
Okay, so but yeah,
it's
because I don't think they ever say his name.
they don't.
Okay, okay. So the doctor, that's an interesting nickname for him. But it's just funny because we were talking about how it's a comedy, but it's a comedy that doesn't really have jokes, and we mean that in a good way. That
Hmm.
scene where the anarchist is like refusing to admit that he saw him there and tell them Volante is like on the verge of tears because he so badly wants him to do it, and that's funny. And like there's a scene where Volante goes to some guy on the street and he says, "Go
Yeah, I
buy a
love
bunch of
this.
ties." Yeah, and then he says, "Go buy a bunch of ties," and he knows these are the type of ties that wore. That he deliberately left a strand of at the murder scene to incriminate himself, and now he's going to send this guy to buy the ties, and he's going to say, "Go to the cops and give these, and tell them that I gave them to you, and describe how I look." And the guy's like, "Are
Hmm.
you serious?" And he's like, "Yes." And then the guy does go to the police, and he shows up like at the exact same time and gives his tie up. And the guy is so nervous that he's right in front of him that he just recants the whole story. And
Yeah,
it's played for comedy because he's like, geez, you know what? Just forget the whole thing. I'm not doing the way he's doing it, but that's the idea is that he's crumbling under the awkwardness and of the whole thing. Yeah.
yeah.
So that's the comedy of
I
it.
think he's terrified because it's just like, oh shit, I didn't think this guy was the chief of, well, he's not the chief of police, but the head detective.
Exactly. I I think this film is part of a lineage that goes back to and probably even further, but there's a movie that this reminds me of another Italian film called Divorce Italian Style, which is
Mhm.
about a guy who at a certain point you couldn't divorce your wife, you couldn't get a divorce in Italy except for in very special circumstances. So this guy's like, "Okay, what I'll do is I'll get my wife, who I hate, um, to have an affair.
Mhm.
Then I will murder her, and then the courts will let me get off because it's reasonable that I did it because you can't get divorced. Like, and which
Hmm.
is something that happened back then. I
Yeah.
that film was directed by Pietro Germi. I think written and directed, but maybe just directed by Pietro Germi. And I really do feel there's some influence from that movie on this movie. And John Maria Volante, I feel like he could have been a Marcello Mastroianni, but he never was. I don't think. I mean, I could be wrong. I'm not an expert on his career, but most people know him from Fistful of Dollars and this.
Hmm.
And For a Few
Yeah.
Dollars More, to be fair. He's also in For a Few Dollars More,
Right.
which is funny. He just like comes back again. He's not the same guy, but he's just, Um,
Yeah.
he's amazing in the movie. He's really
Yeah.
funny and he's really
I
dramatic. He's really good.
I had mentioned that I went into this movie knowing John Maria Volante was in it, but if I did not know that was him, I never would have realized it because
Right.
his appearance is so different from Fistful of Dollars, For a Few
Yeah.
Dollars More, A Bullet for the General, and not only is his his hair is different, he's clean shaven, he's a little paler, but his entire demeanor and mannerisms are completely different. And I never, like I was saying how Florinda Balkan is the mistress, and when I see Florinda Balkan in a movie, I'm like, oh, it's her. But if I didn't know that was John Maria Volante, I would never have guessed it. I never would have known.
Yeah, he's got like a definitely a mustache, but I think like basically like a beard going on in Fistful, and I think For a Few Dollars More too. And
Hmm.
his whole demeanor in because I haven't seen For a Few Dollars More in a bit, but I Fistful of Dollars is very much fresh in my head. I mean, that whole trilogy I love, and I watched a lot as a kid. But um, he played him. I remember him playing that character as like a drunk, like not actually, but just the way he was always like. He always felt like he was off center because he was like a psychopath, and he had this
Hmm.
like woozy kind of way of acting, and so it's super different because he's clean shaven in this. He's got the combed hair. It's totally different, and
Hmm.
he's honestly really good in it. Like there's specific parts of the movie that I'm thinking of where his
He won
performance.
Best Actor.
Did he? I know the movie won, best picture, right? Best foreign film.
Best Actor, John Maria Volante.
That's amazing. That's awesome. I didn't know that. I knew that it won
Well,
best foreign film, but yeah.
that was David D. Donatello Awards.
Oh, so it was an Italian thing.
Yeah, and then in the United States, it won an Oscar for Best Foreign Picture,
Yeah, that's what I was aware of.
and they were nominated for
That's really
Best
cool
Original
too.
Screenplay as well.
And it's interesting because again, Elio Petri's not super well known. I think this is like one of his most well known movies. Um,
I think it is the most well
it
known
is
movie.
his most. That's what I meant to say. Sorry. I
Yeah,
think this
I
is
think
his
it
most
is.
well known movie, and it is. I think there's good reason for that just in the power of itself. Maybe he's made a movie that's better than this, but this is. It's just so like we said. It is. It doesn't ever obscure. It's not subversive, and there'd be nothing wrong if it was. But it's just so in your face about what it is. And
Hmm.
what I find really great about it is because again I've seen this movie many times, but it's been a year or two since last time I watched it. So in rewatching it for this, what I found really great was you would think that premise would run out of steam in about 20 minutes. You would think that premise would run out of steam very quickly. Maybe an hour you could do it. Movie's 2 hours long, right? It's like an hour 50 minutes, an hour 50 something minutes, and so it's like almost 2 hours long, and it makes that premise go for a long time, like a long time until he just has to confess. They
Hmm.
go through a lot of sequences. My favorite sequence is where he says, "We have fingerprints." What fingerprints? Oh, it's nothing. You must have accidentally touched that door. You must have accidentally touched the shower. Of course, we've all went in
Oh,
there. Earlier, one of the guys has a room full of photographs of fingerprints, and
oh yeah.
they're all John Maria Volante's. There's nobody else. It's just his, and he's walking around the room looking at it all,
Yeah, yeah.
and the way the scene ends is he just it looks like he faints or has like a panic attack from like how many fingerprints there are. And he like collapses, and the dude goes, "Are you okay?" And that's it. That's the end of the scene. And like, sorry, I did a snap, but like to indicate like it just cuts. It's like that's the end of the scene, and that is probably my favorite one because. But real quick, he has like an assistant or something. There's like another officer that's working like that he meets with like immediately. I forget what his position is, and that guy is
it is
for
about
sure that he did it.
Is it the part where he's the guy he meets after committing the murder, who tells him about the phone call, and he's like, "When was it?" 10, 20 minutes ago, and he's like, 10 or 20 minutes? Like, that's a big fucking difference between 10 minutes ago and 20 minutes ago.
He's deliberately, and he does this to multiple people, he's deliberately an asshole to that guy.
Yeah.
To heighten the whole I'm above suspicion thing, right? Because if you have to ingratiate yourself with your inferior officers or whatever you call them, that doesn't, then you're not above suspicion. You needed to do that in order to keep this going. So he deliberately provokes him. This is the one guy that actually pursues him throughout the film.
Mm-hmm.
So, which I find that's an interesting thing because his thing is he's always staring at him like, you fucking did it. Like, I know you fucking did it. Like, and I'm gonna find the evidence. It's really funny. Mm-hmm. Like, it's one of my favorite parts of the movie because all the other people are trying to pretend they don't notice it. So it's smart to have at least one person who like maybe actually gives a shit. I thought that was cool.
Yeah.
One notable thing about the score is that British documentary filmmaker, or some might say, agitprop director. No, he's really interesting documentary filmmaker. Adam Curtis is his name. He made The Power of Nightmares and The Century of the South and some other stuff. He's used this song. I forget which documentary he used it in, but he used it in one of his documentaries, and he did it like throughout the whole documentary. And I remember thinking like, I get it because it's a really good song, but like fucker. And like you just steal this song that's directly used. Like he also used a track from Halloween, which I thought was funny. but Adam Curtis has used this song from this movie, and it's because, and I'm sure I know why, because it's a great piece of music. This is a great score. Like it's surprising because you look at Ennio Morricone and you just think this guy can't write any more amazing pieces of music that's like that amazing, and like this is one of his best, I think, honestly.
Mm-hmm. And underrated, because people will talk about.
He's kind of underrated, but yeah.
Yeah, because people will talk about the spaghetti western music, obviously, some of the Giallo music, and then even some of the crime music. And I guess this falls in there, but I never really see it come up in like top Morricone tracks.
Nope. I mean, first of all, I'm going to be a douchebag, and I'm just going to say this. Most like top track listings are just repetitions of previous track listings with a slight variation, Mm-hmm. So that's the problem. Is that if it's a Xerox of a Xerox, how do you get to, enter? Oh, but this movie, like the song that Tarantino used at the end of Bastards. Mm-hmm. That's a Morricone song. That's a fucking great piece of music. I don't see that on many lists. So.
Yeah. Also, the song he opens Bastards with.
Oh yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, you mean
it's when the Nazis pull up.
Yeah, that's what I was thought you were talking about. Is when they show up at the farm. Yeah. But yeah, so
I mean, Tarantino can't really make a movie without dropping in Morricone at least a few times.
Exactly. I did a video on Blake 7, the British show, recently, and someone in the comments was like, well, a couple people were like, you didn't mention the music. And it's like, it's because I don't know how else to just say I like the theme song. I don't know how many other ways to put that other than, I guess I could have just put that in there. It's a great theme song, and maybe I should have, but I didn't know how other detailed ways to put that,
sometimes you make a video, not you, but sometimes one makes a video, like I've had this before, and in like the first big video I made where I was talking about the history of Giallo films, I think I mentioned in there that it's like, look, there's a lot of stuff I didn't touch on, and it's not that I am like oblivious or unaware. It's just that I don't want to make this a 3-hour video, and I just exactly.
That's my thing.
At a point there's just too much stuff to talk about.
I
and
deliberately try to keep it like 10, 15 minutes if I can.
mhm.
So yeah.
So let me ask you, how in a score of between 1 and 5, 1 being nah, not at all, 5 being 100%. How Jollo do you think the plot of the movie is?
I'm gonna give it a 1.
Hmm.
I'm gonna give it a 1, and it's because it has all of the superficial plot aspects of a Giallo. It just is missing the fact that there's no mystery at all to be had. And so
Hmm.
that's the I mean, you know more about Giallos. I'm sure you could tell me there might be some Giallos that are not mysteries, but it's like, and I know there are some Giallos where the main guy's a cop, but I don't think it can really be a Giallo if the main guy is the killer and we know who he is. So maybe if you could push it to 2, but I'm going to go ahead and say 1 because uh, I think that it has a lot of elements that you would have
Hmm.
in a Giallo, and I think you could say it's related to Giallo in a way, but definitely more Polizia Teschi, and not even really that. It's
Hmm.
really a satirical, like black comedy, basically.
Yeah. I was gonna say too, where I kind of see the connection, where it's like I see the ingredients for it. They just need to be. It just needs to be prepared a certain way and brought out because there's, like Hatchet for the honeymoon kind of is like who the killer is, and it's kind of like is he going to get away with it? Also, is he losing
Mhm.
his mind? So if there was a little bit more going on like that kind of
So
stuff,
I
I
did
could
a
really see it. But
I
as it is, it's just kind of a little bit.
you and I play Call of Cthulhu.
Hmm.
I did. Unfortunately, there was like technical problems with it. I might be able to resurrect it now. I'll try to see if I can do anything with it now. But you and I did try to record an episode a long time ago that was a Giallo that I wrote that was a Cthulhu game, and basically it was this movie in a lot of ways. I mean, the plot is totally different, but basically I took the atmosphere of this movie and I just like, but you just don't know who the killer is. And I didn't make it a cop; it was someone else. But the atmosphere of that, where you have shitty cops and you have like protesters and people blowing
Hmm.
things up, because we have to throw this out there real quick before because I know we're getting to the Giallo thing and we should be doing that. But the years of lead, as they're called, are
Hmm.
basically a major basis behind this film and behind the Polizia Teschi films in general. And there was a bombing. I forget the exact name of the place. I was looking it up earlier today, and I don't remember it.
Oh, the one where they
Yeah, Fortuna or something like that.
the one where they killed the guy.
I think it was like in a public location. It wasn't the assassination. It wasn't the
The
latter.
the suspect, the police threw him out of a window. Is that the
No,
one
no,
you're talking about?
that was one of the incidents, but there was a specific incident where there was a bombing in a public location, and the police were like, "Well, it was kind of had to be communists," and they went after an anarchist. They arrested an anarchist, and he was in jail for like 3 years. And it turned out it was some fascists that did it. I think it was the
Oh.
Pia Fortuna bombing, something like that. So, um, Piazza Fortuna or something like that. But so like that comes up in the movie too because there's a bombing and then they can
Mhm.
suddenly jump off. But anyway, sorry, go ahead. So yeah, with the Jallo ratings, I give it a 1 in terms of just really how much Jallo is in the plot itself. Because
Mhm.
again, fuck. I mean, you're right. 2 makes sense though because there's enough stuff that if you add it up. But I'm going to give it a 1. I'm going to stick to my guns and give it a 1. But I think 2 is a good rating also because there's enough things that if you add them all up, you could argue there's a 2 there.
Mhm. Now this is a weird one then to go into, but like then, how about the characters?
In a way, yes. In a way, I mean, if you take a comedy scene from an Argento movie and you extend that throughout the entire film, and you still have a murder in the movie, it's kind of like what it's like. It's kind of like
Hmm.
that, except without as much slapstick. Because I know he used some slapstick, right, at certain parts. But
Yeah.
not for the most part. But the thing is that there's okay, 1 to 5. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
I'm gonna give it a 2.5 actually on that one, and the reason is because in Giallo sometimes people do act crazy like that and like
Hmm.
weird, like they act in the movie. The guy who thinks he did it, the guy who's suspicious of Volante the whole time, that guy belongs in a Giallo 100%. I'm sure he's been in some.
I have it as a I have mine as a 3, where it's like I think
That's
there's
funny.
undeniable
You
like
keep
stuff
being
there, but
That's
just a
funny. You
little
keep
bit
being
above.
just slightly above mine, yeah, and that makes sense. I
Yeah.
think you know more about Giallo. Like that makes sense. but that we're in the same kind of range at least, so I like that.
Yeah. So it's because for that one, I think that there's enough in like John Maria Volante's character and there's enough in Florinda Bolkin's character that I could see those characters in a different. I could see those exact characters, not the actors, but I could see those exact characters in a different
The woman,
movie. And like
yes, 100%. The woman belongs in a Giallo. John Maria Volante is just a little too funny in certain parts of the movie. Like I said, if you think of it as an Argento comedy scene that's extended, then maybe. But that's my only issue with him. But I think the woman and then that guy who suspects him, those guys are absolutely fit in a job. Oh, the guy that's like, ciao. You know what? You won me over. I'm going to go to 3 on this one. I'm going to change my rating. I'm going to say 3 because I think a lot of the side characters, and again, that's why I based them when I did my Call of Cthulhu that was like a Giallo. I based a lot of the side characters on those side characters because they feel that way. The anarchist that they arrest, he could easily be in a Giallo, very easily. So yeah, you know what? You won me over on that one. It's just that the main character, I don't think he fits there. And there's some other funny characters that probably don't fit. But a lot of the side characters, very easily. Very easily. Especially if they're a cop that just sucks at their job.
Yeah. Also, the old guy that he tells to inform on him, and then he's like, "Oh,
Oh my god, yes. Oh my god, that guy absolutely belongs in a Giallo. Yeah.
yeah."
I could go even higher than 3 maybe, but that's
I was also thinking that too. I was like, now that I think about it, I might go 4.
That is one of the strongest aspects of the Giallo-ness is the side actors. Now that I think about it, I'm gonna stick with the 3, but I think that is a fair. I think that's fair. 4 is fair too because it's yeah. There's enough of them. There's enough of them. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, and then this is the last one, and this is kind of a 2-parter, is the style, visual and sound.
Yes, no, is my answer. Visual, in a lot of ways, yes, because there's something about Italy. I don't know if it's in their fucking pasta, but a lot of the directors around that time, even guys that made shitty movies, they had really interesting ways of shooting the movie. And I do feel when I watch it that it could easily be a Giallo. I guess the problem is how much of it is because most Giallos don't look like Investigation of a System of Suspicion, and then there's not a lot of color play to it. So if I actually have to say how much it's like a Giallo, like other Giallos, that's really how you would really judge it. I'm gonna give it a 2. And the reason I'm going to give it a 2 is because I think that if you told me that movie was a Giallo, if you showed me scenes from it and you told me it was a Giallo, I would buy it. But it doesn't have any of the specific visuals that you expect in a Giallo, light reflecting off a knife. I don't even know if he uses gloves at any point in the movie because he's trying to get caught. So I don't think he does that. He doesn't have J&B. He has a different whiskey, right? So visually, it's not super colorful. Like I say, there's one scene where she's like, the chick is doing her makeup on her eye and she's got like a peacock thing going on. That's like the one scene that's kind of Giallo-ish. If you were to show a frame from that, you would think it was a Giallo probably. But I would say mostly that's it. I mean, you've got the fake murder scenes, but yeah, I want to go with 2.
Is that for overall, or is that just for the visuals?
That's for just the visuals. Sound, honestly, sound might be lower. Sound might be 1 because it doesn't sound like a Giallo, and the score is great, but it's not a Giallo score, at least not from my perspective. So
yeah, I think. So, especially because I've been seeing a lot more of the, 60s ones, and I've been seeing a lot more of the, crime hybrid ones and poliziesque hybrid ones, I would say for the visual style, I'd be like, okay. Now, it's not like that super dripping in color and, style over substance, like crash zooms. It doesn't have, the over-the-top Lenzi, Argento, Bava, Martino type style to it. But in terms of the poliziesque Giallo hybrids I've seen, and I actually watched two of those today also. I watched Naked Violence and I watched Death Occurred Last Night, and those are Giallo, and so, but they're shot in a very more of a Polizioteschi, more of a detective thriller way. They're not
Right.
trying to be super stylish, but it's an Italian crime movie. So I would say for visual style 4, only because I've seen a lot of Giallo movies that are presented in this way that's not so glitz and glam, that it's like, okay, I have seen Giallo films that have been shot this way that are not trying. I mean, maybe I could go lower, because Petri did A Quiet Place in the Country, and there was way more Giallo visual stuff in that movie. Like,
yeah, that
way
is
more.
a Giallo, right? Like, that is an actual
Yeah,
Giallo.
dude, the first 10 minutes had so much like weird psychedelic, not psychedelic, but so much weird. I described A Quiet Place in the Country as like a fever dream at times, with
Right.
like, because Franco Nero's character is an artist, and he's kind of got like, he's a painter, so it's not writer's block, but it's like he just can't work. He can't create. And so a lot of the movie is kind of like going into his mind, or kind of just showing his him breaking down, like not being able to create. And so yeah, I guess I've seen Elio Petri do Giallo, so I actually will go down lower. I'll say 3, only because, like I said, I've seen a lot of Giallo movies recently that aren't really trying to overdo it in terms of style.
Right.
And then for the sound, you're right. You kind of got to go lower, because even though Ennio Morricone did the soundtrack, Ennio Morricone did the soundtrack for a lot of other genres. And
Right.
I would say if you play that song that plays in the beginning and you didn't see what it was being paired with visually, I would think you would think it's a spaghetti western. It kind of sounds like,
Closer to that. Closer to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
I,
so
I
I'd
would
say I
I
kind
would
of see
think
the
it was-
connection.
I think I'm not sure because you can't know for certain, but I think I would think it was a comedy because it sounds like
It,
what
it,
goofy.
it sounds like it could go in Trinity.
Yeah, no, it could exactly because it has a bit of the westernness to it, but it's not quite there, and it's kind of funny. But
Closing thoughts on the movie.
closing thoughts on the movie. Look, it's worth watching. It's definitely
Mm-hmm.
worth watching, especially if you're just a fan of film in general. But if you're a fan of Italian film, it definitely is. And then if you're a fan of Giallos or Gialli, you have to understand it's not a Giallo. It simply is not. But it is to Giallos what? How do you compare it? It stands.
Jaws is to slashers.
It stands
Psycho is
alongside
to
Giallos.
slashers.
It stands alongside Giallos culturally, and you pointed it out. It's the same year that Crystal Plumage came out, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it culturally stands alongside it, and I would recommend you do a triple feature if you have the time, or just do one day and then the next and the next, and the feature should start with Costa Gavras Z, 1969. Then you should watch Citizen Above Suspicion, and then you should watch The Conformist, which is also
Oh, wow.
1970, and another Italian film.
Mm-hmm.
I think all three they go together very well. But this is a brilliant film which works, even though it kind of shouldn't. It should run out of steam before it does, and I give it massive credit for that.
I would say that yes, this is a great film, and you can see why it's on the Criterion Collection. And another thing for me that is a good indicator of whether this really is a Giallo or not. I think you could show this to most people, and this is something that I've said, is that I don't show Giallo films to just any of my friends, because I
Right.
have a strong belief that most people are not gonna get it.
This is
It's like-
trash.
It's like you can't show everybody, old Godzilla movies.
Yeah.
Giallo are kind of the same. Like, I can't just be like, oh, I'm going to show you this movie and then put on opera, or put on Tenebrae.
They're very idiosyncratic. They're very specific. Yeah, I understand.
And you kind of have to be down with it. And Investigation of a Citizen Above Suspicion doesn't fall in that category at all.
Right.
I could ask either of my housemates to watch it, and they'd probably enjoy it.
we forgot to mention this earlier, I'm pretty sure. So if there's someone listening who's like, they completely forgot about this, well, we remembered to mention it now. The reason that the film ends the way that it does, which is that it has a double ending, essentially, where the guys tell him, like, we're not going to accept your fucking, confession. And then he wakes up, and then we don't know what happens because it basically cuts the credits. The reason it ends that way is because the filmmakers were worried that they were going to get censored by the government because of how directly anti-government the film was. So they threw that in there to have plausible deniability to say, well, that's not really the ending of the movie, right?
Uh-huh.
But it's the ending of the movie.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so that's the thing about the ending. That's actually why. Because I remember the first time I saw it thinking, what the fuck was that? Like, because I liked the movie a lot, but then when it got to the ending, I was like, why did you do that? And so when I finally, and I think the first time I heard why was on the Criterion commentary track. I think there's a commentary for it. It might be a documentary or something, but something on the Criterion disc, I think, was the first time I heard. And by the way, I was waiting years for this movie to hit American home video release. It was not available on Region 1 for years and years.
Oh,
there was a cheap ass Region 2 DVD that went out of print at some point. So I pre-ordered this fucking movie on the Criterion website the second I heard it was coming out. That's how into it I was. I was like, oh, fuck, yes, it's finally here. So I was happy to do this episode with you, Tanner, and thank you for having me.
Thank you, brother. I love you. You are one of my very best friends, and
I love you, man. Yeah, I know we've known each other a long time. We actually know each other in real life. We're not just like, oh, we're YouTubers who are going to collaborate. I don't know if I would ever collaborate with someone who I don't know. You know what I mean? Like I actually know.
I thought you were going to say I don't think I would ever collaborate with someone who has a Giallo channel.
Well, I mean, maybe not. I don't know. I mean, like, it's not like I have it against it, but yeah.
But
we don't exactly like overlap.
Thank you for joining me for Giallo Adjacent. Unless something happens, I think we're going to do all the Giallo Adjacent podcasts together, and so. Yeah. Again, thank you for joining me, and tell the listeners where they can find you, how they can find you.
You can find me at the Pennsylvania State Penitentiary, Unit 43. You can find me at ParkNarcz, ParkNarcz. I know that sounds stupid, but it was intended to. Long story, but ParkNarcz on YouTube, where I do videos about various pop culture crap that I am obsessed with at the time. And I will have a Patreon soon under the same name, but it is not out yet. It'll be released with my next video. But yeah, and thank you again. This was great.
Of course. Anything else you want to say?
I was gonna spout some really crazy shit, but no.
No politics. No.
Y'all got me talking politics. That's like one of my favorite parts of The Hateful Eight. Is when he says that, because you're like, you were just basically defending the Confederacy. What are you talking about?
Yeah. It's funny, my brain went to, oh, you caught me monologuing.
That's great.
All right. Thank you again. And this is Tanner Leeser for TheKingInGiallo and ParkNarcz. And if nothing else, we'll see you next time.
Later.